Jelly Roll Morton was one of the most interesting figures in jazz history. He was a pianist from New Orleans and the first great composer in jazz. And he had a famous arrogant streak, which comes out a lot in these interviews that he did at the end of his life, where he talks about how he invented jazz all by himself. But that's a bit of a stretch. But what isn't a stretch is that he really laid the groundwork for jazz composition. He brought together different influences that were floating around New Orleans at the beginning of the century, from the blues, classical music, ragtime, what he called the Spanish tinge, which was like rhythms from Spain and the Caribbean, and really created this new art form that was in its very sort of infancy at the time. And there weren't a lot of other early jazz composers that were writing his music with as much formal depth and interest as Morton's tunes. So David and I, have been playing these tunes a lot in our duet back in the day, and in our band, the Dime Notes, and the Vitality Five, and we thought, well, it would be great to sort of learn all of his tunes, because there's so much great stuff in there, and that was the sort of the basis of the project, just the interest in his music. But now we decided to hold ourselves accountable to the public by posting 2 a week on YouTube, and it seems to have generated a lot of interest, and it's been really cool to check out these tunes more thoroughly, the different types of tunes that he wrote, and the different periods of his compositional style, from complex rags, some really nice blueses, beautiful Spanish tinge type tunes. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff in there, so it's been really cool to check it out.
Morton was very interesting because his own personal piano style was what he called a band style, in that you can hear different instruments in his own piano playing. So you can hear trombone lines in the left hand, you can hear clarinet and trumpet melodies in the right hand. But when he played with groups, he often worked with obviously the most significant figures on the scene at the time, including great clarinet players like Omer Simeon, Barney Bigard, and Johnny Dodds. The last two he worked in the sort of first piano trio setting, which was piano, clarinet and drums, and he made some great recordings in that situation. In fact, some of the best recordings that those clarinet players made were made with Morton, so it's really interesting from my perspective. Also, to vary things up a bit, I've dug the bass clarinet out and the bass sax, so that allows me to play some bass lines and for things that focus on the more pianistic elements of his playing. So we both have started collecting 78 RPM records, and we're both fortunate enough to have some of the original Morton records, and it's quite uncanny how good they can sound and how you can feel really transported back to the time. We often hear these records sort of quite badly copied onto CDs and other records, and they sound very sort of crackly and distant, and like they're not sort of, there's no sort of visceral connection with them. Whereas when you have the original records, it's quite an eye-opener, and it makes you realise more than ever how sort of timeless the music is.
Ear opener.
Yeah.